many other public edifices. The riverside portion of the town is entirely mercantile. Its narrow dirty streets and dark houses, with heavy iron shutters, have a disagreeable appearance, which cannot but make an unfavourable impression on the mind of a British traveller. The other portion of the town, however, is of a different character, and the houses are interspersed with gardens and pleasant walks, which look very agreeable from the windows of the ball room of the Nelson Hotel. This room, which is painted from top to bottom, the walls and ceiling, with a coarse imitation of groves and Canadian scenery, commands a superb view of the city, the river, and all surrounding country, taking in the distant mountains of Chamblay, the shores of St. Lawrence towards La Prairie, and the rapids above and below the island of St. Anne's. The royal mountain, Montreal, with its wooded sides, its rich scenery, and its city with its streets and public buildings, lie at your feet. With such objects before you the eye may well be charmed with the scenery of Montreal. We receive the greatest attention from the master of the hotel, who is an Italian. The servants of the house are very civil, and the company that we meet at the ordinary very respectable, chiefly emigrants like ourselves, with some lively French men and women. The table is well supplied, and the charges for board and lodging $1 per day each. Note. This hotel is not of the highest class, in which the charges is $1.50 per day. Editor. I am amused with the variety of character of which our table is composed. Some of the emigrants appear to entertain the most sanguine hopes of success, appearing to foresee no difficulties in carrying their schemes to effect. As a contrast to these, there is one of my countrymen, just returned from the western district on his way back to England, who entreats us by no means to go further up this horrid country, as he emphatically styles the upper province, assuring us he would not live in it for all the land it contained. He had been induced by reading Cattermole's pamphlet on the subject of emigration to quit a good farm, and gathering together what property he possessed to embark for Canada. Encouraged by the advice of a friend in this country, he purchased a lot of wild land in the western district. "But, sir," said he, addressing my husband with much vehemence, "I found I have been vilely deceived. Such land, such a country, I would not live in it for all I could see. Why, there is not a drop of wholesome water to be got, or a potato that is fit to eat. I lived for 2 months in a miserable shed they call a shanty, eaten up alive with mosquitoes. I could get nothing to eat but salted pork, and in short, the discomforts are unbearable. And then, all my farming knowledge was quite useless. People know nothing about farming in this country. Why, it would have broken my heart to work among the stumps, and never see such a thing as a well ploughed field. And then," he added in a softer tone, "I thought of my poor wife and the little one. I might, for the sake of bettering my condition, have roughed out a year or so myself; but, poor thing, I could not have had the heart to have brought her out from the comforts of England to such a place, not so good as one of our cow houses or stables; and so I shall just go home, and if I don't tell all my neighbours what sort of a country this is, they are all crazing to throw their farms and come to. Never trust a word of mine again." It was to no purpose that some persons present argued with him on the folly of returning until he had tried what could be done. He only told them that they were fools if they stayed an hour in a country like this, and ended by execrating those persons who deceive the people at home by their false statements, who sum up in a few pages all the advantages, without filling a volume with the disadvantages, as they might well do. "Persons are apt to deceive themselves as well as to be deceived," said my husband, "and having once fixed their minds on any one subject, will only read and believe those things that accord with their wishes." This young man was evidently disappointed in not finding all things as fair and pleasant as at home. He had never reflected on the subject, or he could not have been so foolish as to suppose he would encounter no difficulties in his first outset, in a settlement in the woods. We are prepared to meet with many obstacles, and endure considerable privations, although I dare say we may meet with many unforeseen ones, forewarned as we have been by our Canadian friends' letters. Our places are taken in the stage for Lachine, and if all is well, we leave to morrow morning. Our trunks, boxes, etc., are to be sent on by the forwarders to Cobourg, August 22nd. Cobourg, August 29. When I closed my last letter I told you, my dear mother, that we should leave Montreal by sunrise the following day; but in this we were doomed to be disappointed, and to experience the truth of these words, "Boast not thyself of to morrow, for thou knowest not what an hour may bring forth." Early that very morning, just an hour before sunrise, I was seized by the symptoms of the fatal malady that had made so many homes desolate. I was too ill to commence my journey, and, with a heavy heart, heard the lumbering wheels rattle over the stones from the door of the hotel. I hourly grew worse, till the sister of the landlady, an excellent young woman, who had previously shown me great attention, persuaded me to send for a physician; and my husband, distracted at seeing me in such agony, ran off to seek for the best medical aid. After some little delay a physician was found. I was then in extreme torture, but was relieved by bleeding, and by the violent fits of sickness that ensued. I will not dwell minutely on my sufferings; suffice to say they were intense; but God in his mercy, though he chastened and afflicted me, yet gave me not over unto death. From the females of the house I received the great kindness. Instead of fleeing affrighted from the chamber of sickness, the two Irish girls almost quarrelled which should be my attendant; while Jane Taylor, the good young woman I before mentioned, never left me from the time I grew so alarmingly ill till a change for the better had come over me, but, at the peril of her own life, supported me in her arms and held me on her bosom, when I was struggling with mortal agony, alternately speaking peace to me and striving to soothe the anguish of my poor afflicted partner. The remedies applied were bleeding, a portion of opium, blue pill, and some sort of salts, not the common Epsom. The remedies proved effectual, though I suffered much from sickness and headache for many hours. The debility and low fever that took place of the cholera obliged me to keep my bed some days. During the two first my doctor visited me 4 times a day. He was very kind, and on hearing that I was the wife of a British officer emigrating to the Upper Province, he seemed more than ever interested in my recovery, evincing a sympathy for us that was very grateful to our feelings. After a weary confinement of several days, I was at last pronounced in a sufficiently convalescent state to begin my journey, though still so weak that I was scarcely able to support myself. The sun had not yet risen when the stage that was to take us to Lachine, the first 9 miles of our route, drove up to the door, and we gladly bade farewell to a place in which our hours of anxiety had been many, and those of pleasure few. We had, however, experienced a great deal of kindness from those around us, and, though perfect strangers, had tasted some of the hospitality for which the city has often been celebrated. I omitted in my former letter telling you how we formed an acquaintance with a highly respectable merchant in this place, who afforded us a great deal of useful information, and introduced us to his wife, a very elegant and accomplished young woman. During our short acquaintance we passed some pleasant hours at their house, much to our satisfaction. I enjoyed the fresh breeze from the river, along the banks of which our road lay. It was a fine sight to see the unclouded sun rising from behind the distant chain of mountains. Below us lay the rapids in their perturbed state, and there was the island of St. Anne's, bringing to our minds Moore's Canadian boat song, "We'll sing at St. Anne's our parting hymn." The bank of the St. Lawrence, along which our road lay, is higher here